Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton, here with Brandon. Final game of the Lesser Grail today. We've got 8-bar Sakura Rider taking on 8 Salvage and Archer. Brandon, you're on 8-bar. What does this matchup look like to you?
Realistically, I think this matchup looks pretty similar. Like, we have a lot of these similar kinds of roles in our decks. We're both looking at more of a kind of defensive top end. We're looking more at a resource generation level 1. Mine requires a reverse, yours is on attack. Yours gets low, so that way my Sakuras could be able to get that reverse. So we're kind of more or less going to be trading pretty evenly early. I think it's really going to come down to the events that are available for the decks in play. With 8-bar Sakura having stock swap available to it, and I think conversely, Reen not having stock swap available to it during that mid game, I think could make or break the difference here. Otherwise, we're running very close to similar tools. We're both running 2-1 free fresh, we're both running illusion magic, we're both running tools that help us be able to kind of control our decks and our deck states a little bit better. So I think it's really going to come down to those minute differences. Your 3-1 event and the stock swap for Sakura Rider. The access that we have with those events, I think is going to make the difference here.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities between these two lists. They in many ways feel like Old Guard versus New Guard. The primary difference is that the level 1 Sakura requires a reverse, whereas the level 1 Reen does not. In this matchup, that doesn't make as big of a difference because Reen just doesn't get very big. I can deny Sakura in theory. Like, we've talked about this before with the Sakura, where, especially, if you are late in 0, if I can push you into level 1 without giving you reverse targets, that forces you to hold your combo in hand for a full turn, which potentially gives you, less of a board, and, I might be able to push you into 2 before you're able to get your combo down, and the best that this deck can do is potentially delay your level 1 game. You can't really deny it on board. And then at the top, they're similar because they're both very defensive top ends. Neither of them swing for big damage. Rider, obviously, with the neg soul, neg power on the combo. Reen with the 3-1 counter event that adds soul to whoever's attacking. So if you attack with the Rider on your combo turn at 3 soul, I can turn that into a swing for 7, 11, 15, depending on how many of those events are in memory. The similarities between these two are very obvious. I mean, we've played games where it felt like we were just kind of mirroring the other's actions. I think long term, in this matchup, it's about a 50-50 matchup. Because Reen can only do so much. It has 1 copy of the Blink, but other than that, like, it can't really deal with the Rider on board. It doesn't get big enough to fight it, so it really needs to stay alive. And if it can get its burn combo together and get its Blink on the same turn, then it might have a chance to close. But in any case, this is a very close matchup with, the decks constructed the way they are. This match also being played over Discord, because we had some trouble with the video the first time we tried to record this.
Sakura corrupting the video.
Wow. So for me, I'm trying to obviously get the level 1 combo together because it's the primary plussing engine for the deck. I also would love to get both of my Reens in the back row, both the Clock Encore Reen and the Pay 1 Rest 2 Top Check 4.
With this here, swinging with the bomb first, getting the level 0 bomb in play early, I think is a pretty good threatening turn for you. Because if I can help clear your board, it just allows me just different avenues to be able to keep pushing you. I almost want you to get to level 1 first, so that way I can reverse your level 1 combo.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And having the bomb on board also can, if it clears me, force me to later on put something down in an open lane.
Mm-hmm. I draw into 2 copies of the bomb here. So I have 3 of the 4 copies of this deck runs in play immediately. So I can try to get that memory compression going almost instantly.
Yeah, the bombs are interesting here because if you bomb me, that clears a lane for you, which means that I have to swing into an open lane, which leaves you a reverse target on your next turn.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. So, like, for me, getting the bombs at this point in time, I thought was a really good timing. I mean, it just was my hand, so I was going to play anyway. But having that timing of the bombs now, so that way when you get to that level 1, like you're about to right now, getting to level 1, the bombs are more or less kind of ineffective for the stock bomb part. You're going to have characters on field,
Yeah.
so I can react in kind.
Mm-hmm. And at this point, like, I could, in theory, try to play in a way that denies you your combo, but I literally had 4 copies of the level 1 combo in hand. I didn't really have anything else. Like, I literally drew into 4 copies. I also choose not to use the Amagi here, mostly for stock. I know I'm about to get 3 off the combo, and I still feel good about my hand size situation at this point.
Yeah, and realistically, since your deck has quite a few different stock outs anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it makes sense not to try to overburden the hand too. I end up leveling
So,
red here because I have green and clock in the next deck, so like,
yep.
able to kind of already prepare for the 2-1.
The 3 cards of compression you get off of having the Shiro Bomb is pretty nice as well.
Oh yeah. Like I think that's gonna make I think that makes a significant difference in this game anyway. Like, especially when we have a very mirrored deck, just those little bits of compression I think make a overall bigger difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think 3 is the limit on the number of Shiros you can have in memory,
Yes.
more or less. So, being able to maximize that and get all 3 down is useful. Drop Search. I think that card shows up in every one of our decks, almost.
Pretty close, yeah.
It's just so good. It's such a good drop searcher. Like, the fact that it gets so big means it's useful as a, an oversized at 0. It plays really well with the Dark Sakura, as we've talked about before. It's red, which is a useful color. It's just really nice overall.
And kind of going back to that mirroring idea, we're essentially doing the same thing back to back.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know what I want to do with the level 1 backup situation in this deck. Because realistically, I can clock encore these Reens in most situations. I don't have my clock encore down like I want to. I didn't see it, in the first couple of turns. But usually I'll have the clock encore down, so I don't need to worry about, having a character down for the next turn. I can stand it back up for the cost of 1 clock, which isn't bad, especially if you get cancels early. But it also does let opponents that need reverse combos get their reverses off pretty easily. And, obviously fewer and fewer decks need that sort of reverse for the combo anyway. So there's the clock encore Reen, and there's the back row that I can use to top check for add 1. I add the 3-1 event here because you can add level 1 or higher cards.
Mm-hmm.
The event access is so important. It also gives access to the illusion magic, which, can be important in certain matchups.
You turn around and just use the event to get a character, which I think is
Yeah.
a pretty smart choice here. So essentially, you're turning stock into cards pretty effectively.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good to pay 2 salvage, basically, honestly. Like, because you pay 1 to get the event, and then you pay another 1 to switch the event out or something else. Like, pay 2 salvage doesn't feel great, but it's some salvage access, that isn't the trigger.
Trying to go for getting some of that clock compression. Try and keep the cards in clock out of your next deck.
Yeah.
I think it's also a really good play here, just because you're trying to maximize what your next potential deck looks like.
I really think that the most important thing in the majority of Weiss games is compression. The player who compresses their deck the best is going to win more often than not. It's like I think it's one of the things that there's a strong correlation towards. So as much as I would love to get the additional card into hand, it wasn't worth stuffing 6 clean cards into my next deck. My refresh is actually really strong, and it also does put me into level 2, which I don't think comes into play in this game, but is something that, if I can get myself into 2 during my turn with the refresh point, it allows me to play my 2s, even potentially get early plays down. I decide to crash instead of siding because 1, I need the damage, and 2, I don't want to give you more than 1 reverse target.
Being able to try to deny my combo as much as possible, especially knowing that my board's going to be bigger on this turn. Part of the reason why I don't brainstorm here is because of where my deck is at. I have getting the 1 instance of the combo. By the end of turn, I should only have 2 cards left in deck. And that's assuming that I don't trigger the last remaining bar in the deck.
And that also allows you to refresh pretty well compressed as well. Clock compression at level 1 is seriously not talked about enough.
Especially with the stock that I have as well, my refresh here is going to be pretty crazy.
Yeah. You trigger the stock swap, which for me is obviously a welcome sight.
Yeah. Your stock's also been a little dirty.
Yeah.
Even triggering climaxes, so it's not been kind of worth the stock swap yet.
Yeah.
Because I do have 1 in hand.
I wasn't a huge fan of this early play at first, but having played it more, I actually like it quite a bit. Because at climax phase, if you resonate the 3-1 from hand, you show the 3-1 in your hand, it picks up 3,000 power, and it holds it on defense. So it still sits at 11.5, and if you have the back row Amagi, it sits at 12 on defense, which is, actually pretty sizable for an early play, and can be backed up as well. If the deck is built around that early play, if it's built with the early play in mind, you'll usually be able to keep board. The only backup in this list is the level 1, so it's not as good at helping it keep board. But going forward, I think that this list is going to have some bigger backups at level 2 to really try to maximize the use of the Reen, especially because you can resonate the event again.
Absolutely.
And just keep the power. Like, it essentially stays at 11.5 as long as it's on your board, with no other help.
No, and especially going up against this deck, having that additional power, I think is going to be pretty helpful. Especially if you can get that the back row assist right there in play.
Yeah, I like the Ilya back row assist in this because it has the climax swap on it, and there's just no climax swap in Fate unless you're playing green or Excalibur. There's just no climax swap, so I would like to at least have access. And I think that, when this list plays Dark Sakura, the Icy Tail in the future, which it will, that's going to be even more important.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely.
I almost feel bad splitting up the Reen and Sakura decks in red, honestly, because they complement each other so well. I think I've talked about this before, but like this Reen level 1 thrives with the Sakura top end, which also plays very nicely with the 3-1 event, because the 3-1 event only requires one jewel character on board, which means you need to have one Reen. So, there are at least 2, if not 3 or more, viable back row Reen cards to play. So if you're playing any of them, just leave Reen in the back row the whole game, and you always have access to that 3-1 event. So I think that's the top end of the future for Red Fate, is the Sakura Icy Tail combo with the 3-1 defensive event.
I mean, makes sense. There's, having that defensive capabilities on top of having that kind of offense is pretty strong.
There aren't very many decks that can potentially close from 3-0 on offense and also stay alive from 3-0 on defense as consistently as Red Fate will be able to do. Because the Icy Tail, not to talk about a deck that is, completely not in this game right now, but that Icy Tail, compressed decks and not compressed decks. Because the Icy Tail, obviously, punishes compression, but it also has swings for 3. And of course, the mill can create more damage as well. So
I make a really interesting play here by getting the rider off of the brainstorm option here. When I trigger the bar, being able to pull the rider out of my clock, so now I have 2 riders in hand. I think it's actually set me up really well in case, for whatever reason, you manage to push me into level 3 on the following turn. But because I'm good on stock, I'm not blind stocking into a deck that I have decent compression in still. This is me double checking the ratio to figure out, make sure our compression is still decent.
Yep. Yeah, the fact that you didn't trigger on the bomb here as well, like that would have killed the Reen, would have clock kicked it. Or clock bombed it, rather. But because there's no card in clock because the damage resolves first, the Reen gets to live.
Part of that, too, also would have been just doing it a little bit different in order of turns. Had I swung with the clock bomb first.
But yeah, there's the, there's the early play Reen living cross turn at 13-5, which is nice.
And realistically, the 2-1 rider that this deck plays with can't scale that without assistance. It can get it max 13. So, I would need to slam a climax to be able to get to 14. But even then, your 1k backup is enough to be able to step over that. So, also could have had the opportunity to blind stock as well on the rider versus the 2-1 archer. But again, because the deck state is where it's at, the potential 3 instances of blind stocking on that turn wasn't worth it for the compression that I had.
Yeah, this is a bit of a weird spot for me to be in, because I don't have a ton of stock. I only have, 3 and now 2. I decide to use the back row to get me to the point when I can use the free refresh. I know I had one in my deck at that point, so I'm refreshing pretty okay here. I'm refreshing 7 in, I think, about 30.
Well, that and using the free refresh here, I think, also helps save you additional damage that you would have had to take during this turn anyway.
Yeah.
To try to just help prolong that game even just that next step further.
Yep. Yep. The last card in my stock is Climax, which I forgot I triggered at this point, which is something I'm going to learn in just a minute, and it's gonna annoy me. But yeah, I'm in the spot right now where I can win board. I'll go up to 4 stock, which will be enough for me to play the 2/3/1s I have in hand. And yes, so like I should have played that 2/1 down before refresh, so I could have put that 8th Climax into my deck, but neither here nor there at this point. I'm hoping that I can push the Reen in the middle up to 15/5, so that it can potentially get over your rider even with the 4,000 power that it loses. Because the rider only gets up to 11 with the Climax. But that being said, still, my hope here is, I get up to 4 stock, I push you a little bit, maybe into 3, and I do not. Obviously, you can still get into 3 because you're going to be able to get through your deck and also clock, so you still have access to your level 3 game if you want it. But on my end of the table, I have 2 of the 3/1 events in hand. My compression is still pretty okay at this point. So
I'm double checking number.
I feel confident that I'm going to live into the next turn. And then hopefully actually get my combo down. Yeah, I think at this point you refreshed like 8 out of 22 or something. You refreshed incredibly well.
This one, actually not as much, because I had just triggered.
That's right.
And I had blind stocked 1. So I'm actually only refreshing 4 at this point, because I have to clock the Climax on top.
That's right.
So I'm actually in a pretty bad deck state at the moment.
I was thinking of your previous refresh, yeah.
Yeah, where I was 8 out of 19. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, it was nuts.
So here I'm not quite ready to close. So I blink your Reen in order to drop power, and then clock on core to get it back so I can actually get up to 3. I could have clocked and drawn for turn, but I didn't necessarily want the caster on field, taking up an additional slot that way.
Fair enough. Yeah, the blink on the Reen is important, by the way, because it only gains power at my Climax phase from resonating the event. So that 3,000 power stays on it cross turn. But I can't, put it back. It's a lingering effect from my previous turn. So now it sits at 12/5 with the back row, and once the rider comes down, once the combo goes off, it'll be at 8/5, so it'll get reversed. Which is a really good move on your part, because it keeps me from keeping my 2-soul on the field.
It also removes Reens.
Yeah.
So, obviously it doesn't stop the Reen now, but,
Right. I play the first 3/1 event. I remember to put it in memory, so you swung for 7, and it canceled on 3. I wanted to prevent the possibility of you, and then you swing for 2 and I cancel. Yeah, I played the event down when a swing for 3 would not have been lethal, but a swing for 6 would have been, because I didn't want to... I am able to blink away the rider in the middle with the caster, which is nice. I push the other Ilya up because even though that neg 4,000 power is a lingering effect on whatever is in that slot, Ilya's at 6/5, so she's big enough. Basically, I'm just trying to keep the stock together for next turn.
Mm-hmm.
I played the Reen Archer because I wanted to heal, even though I didn't have the combo.
Oh, yeah, no, and healing makes sense here. And it's also another Reen back on field again, so that way you can play the event.
Yep. Siding into the rider, as much as obviously it feels terrible because I can't do any damage, it's also not that bad because I have to play the 3-1 as a counter, which means I need to have a character in the slot that is being swung into.
And it also is realistically, it's also a stock generation. It helps prevent me from trying to overswing here.
Yeah,
because like I still need to stick 5 damage at some point, and with Ryder not
right.
with Ryder being more defensive top end.
Yeah, I don't think that you have the climax in hand. You may have a climax, but I don't think you have the climax. And I see, that your board is just 2/1/1, so like you'll need to trigger in order to swing for lethal. Which you don't. You get the climax though, so you'll be able to run it back next turn if you can. Um, I decided to just eat the 2.
Yeah, because it wasn't a swing for lethal, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just watching for lethal at this point, and this one is for 2. So I decide not to play the event because I have one more in hand, because that wasn't a swing for lethal. And then you swing for 1. So I actually only used one of the 3-1 events, which is unusual. Playing the second event feels great once you've played the first. The first feels a little bit spooky because it's like, oh no, I could eat 6 here.
Yeah.
But once you get to the second one, it's basically impossible for, 10 or 11 damage to stick. I heal down again. And I think that I don't think I played this turn the way I should have. Because I play that level 1 Ream that lets me pay 1 pitch, 1 top, check 4, and I don't pick up that climax that you see in Waiting Room. I instead picked up the Illusion Magic event. I was thinking about playing that and trying to get you into a worse compression state. Because I know you have 1 left in your 4-card deck.
Yeah.
But ultimately what I decide here is to take the more or less the guaranteed refresh damage, and either if the climax is in your bottom 2 cards, I can swing with the 2 soul and I guarantee myself a win if this sticks. And it does not because it's card 2, and now I need to trigger.
Yeah.
And I don't.
And you don't. Yeah.
So, in retrospect, like, I broke like one of my own cardinal rules for this game, which is when you have the chance to swing for lethal, swing for lethal. Like, guarantee yourself a swing for lethal whenever you get that opportunity. You should have just picked up the climax. Because ultimately I didn't even use the Illusion Magic event. I thought about using it, and then decided that I would rather take the guaranteed refresh point. And oddly enough, my compression is actually still good here, and I still have that 3-1 in hand, so like I could still survive this turn too. Especially because you slam the climax here. I take the 2 because I need to get a cancel onto somewhere.
And you didn't want the new deck or the new deck to be able to be the one where you get it.
Yes.
Yeah. If the climax was on top, there would have been enough cards in me to swing for lethal on the next turn. You wouldn't have gotten a cancel beyond that. So you needed the cancel to be in the top 2 cards and then go from there.
Yeah.
But
so, like, I feel like I didn't play that endgame well at all. Offensively. Defensively, I think I played it right, but offensively, I did not.
Yeah, I think grabbing the climax might have been the better play there, just because you could have increased your damage output just a tiny bit.
Oh yeah,
Um,
oh yeah, it was 100% the right play. What was statistically a good chance at winning for what was statistically a slightly less good chance at winning, because I mean, if the climax is in the bottom two cards, or if I trigger even once during that sequence, then I swing for perfect lethal and I win the game. But I didn't assess the odds well in that situation.
so, as we look at the bracket, we have one game left, the finale. We see Gilgamesh and Saber take on the final game.
There should be no ambiguity about who I want to win. 3 out of 4 Grail Wars. Let's make it 4 out of 5. But yeah, Saber Gilgamesh tomorrow. It's going to be super fun. I hope. Either that or it's going to be super disappointing. One or the other. In any case, thank you for watching this video. We'll be back tomorrow for Gilgamesh and Saber. In the meantime, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.
We'll see you then.